Alright, let's talk about Doom. So it might be weird to be doing an impressions video of a over 30-year-old PC game now, but I think that's kind of the point of why I wanted to talk about it, because there's a lot of stuff about Doom that I think is really missing now, that we've kind of lost in video gaming, and I think that's really, really important. It's kind of crazy to me that Doom, which was released in 1993, so perfectly seems to fill a niche in gaming now in 2024. That's wild to me. And so I wanted to make a video just sort of like talking about Doom and sort of like more holistically talking about what Doom represents, and what I think the gaming industry can learn from games like Doom. So 1993 from id Software, one of their big hitters of the day. I think, like, my dad loved Doom. Like, I haven't played Doom since probably 1993, to be perfectly honest. Like, since I was a wee bairn, way back in the day. My dad had Doom. He loved Doom. It was such a dad game, wasn't it? Like, I think everyone's dad owned and loved Doom back in the day. And I actually didn't like it at all back then when I played it. I wasn't big into first-person shooters. I wasn't big into sci-fi. I was a fantasy kid. And so Doom, with its like, you know, sci-fi first-person shooter, Mars demon aesthetic sort of thing it had going on, just never really appealed to me. I tried it a few times, but, you know, it never really clicked like it did with my dad. Fast forward now to 2024, and I have a very, very different feeling about Doom, having now played it again for the first time in over 30 years. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I liked and didn't like about the recent remaster / re-release remake of Doom that just came out fairly recently. But before I get into like talking about, you know, specifics too much, I just want to sort of talk a little bit about Doom as a whole and the type of game it is as a whole. So where am I coming at this from? So like life's busy, right? And I think Doom really gives me very much what I'm looking for in a game experience now, right? Like, I'm a single parent. I have a kid. I have a very complicated, taxing full-time job. I run a home business as well. You know, I do this YouTube channel as a bit of a creative outlet to try and keep me fucking sane. And like, you know, by the time my day ends at sort of 9:30 at night, after having been up since 6 a.m. in the morning, like, I'm fucking done. I'm done for the day. And I just want to sit down and play a video game if I can even be bothered doing that. And I think that's why I play so few modern games these days, because I feel like gaming has sort of taken I know it's emblematic in everything you look at these days, in how it's very much more shifted towards engagement over fun. Every game that comes out now seems like this massive multi-hundreds of hours commitment that you have to engage in to feel any kind of accomplishment, any sense of achievement in the game at all. And that sort of shit just intimidates the crap out of me, and I can't be bothered. Like, I just don't have the time. I just don't have the energy. I just can't be fucked. Like, I just want to sit down and shoot some demons for half an hour to an hour and go to bed and wake up the next day and run the gauntlet again. So I think that's why there are so few modern games that really grab me. I mean, there's loads that I would love to play, but I just look at them and I look at sort of like what they ask of the player, the investment that they ask of the player, of me, and I just don't have it to give. I just don't. There's no space for a 200-hour game in my life. And so a lot of these huge experiences, even ones that I really, really want to engage with, just kind of end up passing me by for that reason. I mean, I only get sort of like one opportunity a week, if that. Sometimes it's only once every 2 weeks to really sit down and engage in playing a video game for any real length of time. And so if I am dedicating myself wholly to a single 200-hour deep dive experience, that's probably going to be the only game I play for the next fucking 6 to 8 months. And there's so much, there's so much out there that I want to play. I can't justify spending that quantity of time on a single title. And I think that's largely why, this channel even exists, to be honest, because I think a lot of us are in the same boat. My situation is by no means unique. And older retro games just were made fundamentally differently. They were made as a single sit down, in and out experience where you can have a bash, complete a few levels, save the game, fuck off, and not forget all the like myriad of systems and mechanics that that you might not touch again for the next week or two, and then you have to come back and you didn't have to like relearn the game from scratch. And I think there's a real gap that's appeared in providing that kind of experience to that audience, of which I am very much a part of, in the modern gaming landscape. And I think that's a huge reason as to why I largely play retro games these days, because it fills that gap. Now, speaking specifically about Doom, I was like amazed at how fucking well this game holds up. This has aged brilliantly in terms of filling that exact niche. Like, we've seen it, and I think I'm noticing a little bit of a shift back towards this understanding that, like, hey, there's a massive audience of people that just can't commit to these huge ongoing live service experiences, these life games, right, that feel like a third fucking job or a marriage or something. And you saw that with games like Space Marine 2 recently, right? Which I very much enjoyed, because it sort of like, it understood that to a large extent, and just, it went and provided that experience of like, hey, here's a game that's just a fucking video game. Play it, have fun, do a level, knock off for the night. It's not all that complicated. You're going to be able to come back in a week, remember how to play, and go again. That's great. I miss that. I miss that so much. And playing Doom, I think, really highlighted just how much I miss that. And so, like, I'll bury the lead. I fucking loved it. I had so much fun playing Doom. I did a total 180 of having really no interest in it and not liking it at all as a kid, to sitting down now, older than my dad was then when he played it. And now I can see why he loved it as much as he did through an adult lens, right? And I had a great time. I absolutely loved it. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about the things specifically that I liked. There was a couple of things I didn't like, but on the whole, I couldn't believe how much fun I had revisiting this like 31-year-old shooter from id. It was phenomenally good fun. All right, so let's talk about some likes. So, and all of these are going to be sort of like highlighting different aspects of what I've just talked about now. So the simple gameplay loop, right? That still had enough variety to keep you invested. Another game I played recently was Bolt Gun, Warhammer 40,000 Bolt Gun, which was very much like a riff on Doom and Quake and that era of gaming. And Bolt Gun was great. I had a really, really good time with it. Really enjoyed it. But Bolt Gun started to like fairly quickly feel repetitive. Like, and I know, I at the time I was like, well, that's kind of emblematic of the shooters that it's aping. But I never really felt that playing Doom. I didn't feel like I was playing this super repetitive shooter and just doing the same thing over and over again, even though the mechanics of the game are very, very simplistic. It just walked that line perfectly of like, just as you're getting sick of fighting nothing but zombies, here's a demon. And just as you're sick of of running up against that particular demon and zombies, here's a bigger demon. And as you're getting sick of those, here's a dude with a shotgun that you have to approach differently. And here's some guys on different like elevations now. And it just sort of like threw enough new stuff at you and enough variety in its level designs and the rooms in the level designs that it sort of had this like trickle feed of new stuff at just the right, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Just the right sort of like pacing to keep you interested, even though all you're doing is like moving the mouse and clicking on things and moving around. Like there's not a lot to Doom, right? There's like, it's a pretty simple game. It's it's as close to a point and click game as a shooter can get, really. But I don't know. I never got bored with it. I never felt like I was just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Like I started to feel in Bolt Gun when I was, got a fair way into that game. And you started to feel like, I'm just fighting the same enemy over and over and over again for a long period of time. Doom never really felt like it had that problem for me. And so I never actually really got bored of it. And that sort of also ties into my next point, which is the length of the levels. They're nice short levels. I think I streamed this recently for about, I don't know, an hour and a half or so. And man, like I managed to work my way through the entire first section of the campaign, of which I think there was about 8 levels or so. I knocked them all over in a single sitting in an hour and a half. What happened to that? Like what happened to levels that didn't feel like enormous grinds and huge slogs? I think that's somewhere that, Space Marine 2 certainly misstepped for me, is that the further into the campaign you got, some of its levels just got stupidly long, and the time investment, without knowing how much longer is this level going to go on for, without knowing that information, you weren't really sure of like, am I in for a 30-minute haul here? Or am I in for a 2-hour and 30-minute haul here? Doom never felt like that. All the level designs were like, they were short, they were punchy, they were quick, and you were never in danger of sort of like getting bored with the content that was presented to you in that bite-sized chunk. So I thought like the pacing of the game, the level design, like particularly how long the levels were, was like, it was spot on, absolutely spot on. And again, really highlighted the disparity between game design then and game design now. I really like the clarity of design in Doom as well. Like I said, it's a very simple game. It's a very simple concept, sort of evolving that Wolfenstein 3D formula out a little bit. But it's like, you're thrown into a level. There's no fucking like 20 minutes of story exposition at the start of the game. There's no like fucking deep lore that I need to know to understand like who the characters are. There's no like pages and pages of dialogue that I need to sit there and read. I may as well read a fucking novel sometimes with these games. It's just like, in you go. You're on Mars. It's infested by demons. Why? Who fucking knows? Go and kill them. Here's some guns. Brilliant. Brilliant. And it just sticks to that clarity of design, and it never wavers from it. It never strays from that. It knows what it wants to be. It knows how it wants you to feel, and it executes on that like a fucking razor. Like it nails it. And that's very simple gameplay, that very straightforward run and gun, shoot everything that moves sort of gameplay. It never wavers from it. And because it has that clarity of design, it's able to execute it so fucking well, because it's not trying to muddy the waters with, we also want to be a fucking gacha game, and we also want to be a fucking RPG, and we also want to be a puzzle game, and we also want to be this and that, and then MMO and blah, 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 right? It's just, it knows what it wants to be, and it stays in its lane, and it does it really fucking well. The gunplay was fun. It took a little bit of getting used to, actually, because we're going back 30 years here, and it's amazing how much sort of like the mechanics of modern shooters, how accustomed to them that you've become over time, and the things that you take for granted that didn't actually exist all the way back in 1993. Very simple things such as being able to aim up and down, right? Like you can't aim up and down. It's just like, it's purely horizontal aiming, and that's it. And that took some getting used to, because you run up against enemies that are on different elevations, and you learn fairly quickly that all you need to do is face in their direction and shoot, and the game takes care of the rest. The game is like, oh, you're aiming at this guy up here, okay, it's going to take the damage, even though you can't physically move your view up and down. So that wrong-footed me to start with, but as you get into it, it sort of, again, it just sticks to that clarity of design, where it's just one less thing you have to worry about. It's just movement and hitting the shoot button. And that's it. You're just in the zone with those two things, and that's all you need to do. The guns feel good. even back then, the gun still felt punchy. The shotgun is great. The minigun is my favorite. Absolutely love it. The rocket launcher felt great. I didn't get to play with all the toys that I had that the game has at its disposal because I only did the first section of the campaign. I think it's broken into 4 parts. I did the first part, the tutorial level, so to speak. But even just with the basic toys that it gives you in that, again, it drip feeds you enough to keep it interesting without being like, here's all the guns that have ever existed, or here's your one gun and you're going to be using that forever for the next, 5 levels. It just gives you just enough in the pacing of the equipment for it to feel good. And when you get the new guns, they feel exciting, they feel punchy, and you want to try them out. And so the gunplay, surprisingly, felt really fucking good still. I want to talk a little bit about the movement-based gameplay. Sam, who was watching me play on the live stream, said that Doom is very much a movement-based game, not a shooting-based game. And I think he fucking nailed it with that. Because that's very much what this game is about. It's about how well can you move around the environment. The shooting very much is secondary. And I think as you watch if you go back and watch the Let's Play of me playing Doom, you can see at the start me trying to treat it like a traditional shooter, right? Like very much sort of like moving very slowly, taking aim, firing, but not moving very much, being very static, being very cautious, playing very slowly. And then as time progresses, as I get into the rhythm of the game, you sort of see that mentality that modern shooters tend to encourage kind of disappear and melt away. And I'm running around, I'm dodging fireballs, I'm strafing, like the whole, the gameplay just shifted for me. And it ended up feeling really, really good. The movement itself, I'm going to talk a little bit about in the dislikes as well, because there's aspects of the movement that I found very tricky. But for the most part, putting the focus on it being a movement-based game and not a shooting-based game, I mean, like I said, you can barely aim. You've only got to aim in their general direction, and the game assumes that you will hit them. The closer you are, the more damage a lot of guns do. But the focus is very much on how you get around, how you navigate the levels, how you navigate these encounters. Because you've got shit flying at you, you've got fireballs coming at you, you've got guys like pouring in some levels that you have to maneuver around. And yeah, I was just sort of like amazed at exactly what Sam said, that the more you focus on the movement, the better the experience you end up having is. It's we all think of Doom as like this shooter, but it actually felt to me, and this is going to be a weird comparison, but it felt like Mario. It felt like a lot like playing Super Mario Brothers on a 3D kind of plane, in terms of like Super Mario Brothers is very much about the movement, the momentum, building and maintaining that momentum and keeping the flow going. Doom felt very, very similar. Difficulty options. There were, I think, 5 different difficulties or 6 different difficulties at the beginning of the game. Brilliant. Great to see difficulty options. I love seeing them in games. The fact that it was in a game from, like, you don't really get difficulty settings in old games, really, do you? Like, games used to just sort of throw you in and that was it. Away you went. It's as hard as it is. Fucking get good or go home, right? But this had a difficulty settings screen at the beginning. And that was a bit of a surprise to me because I didn't remember that immediately from back in the day. So, yeah, that was good. If you want to, like, heighten or lower the difficulty as you play through. I'm guessing it only means like you take more damage and enemies have more health. I'm guessing the difficulty is fairly arbitrary, but it's cool to see it in there nonetheless. I didn't see an option to adjust it on the fly, like as you're moving your way through the game. I don't know if there's a way you can, like, if you run up against a level that you just can't get past, if you can lower it down to move through that particular section, or heighten it if you're finding it too easy. I didn't see that. I only saw the option to change it at the beginning of a section of the campaign. But anyway, it's always cool to see that because I'm shit at games. And so if I got the option to lower the difficulty, it's appreciated, at least while I get my feet wet. The art design was like banging. I mean, it's 1993 era graphics, right? Like it looks like it's from 1993. In all its pixelated glory. But there's still, again, this goes back to the clarity of design that I was talking about before. The art design is still really cohesive. It all fits. It all looks great. Like, even in its, retro goodness, I still thought Doom was a good looking game. And I think that's largely because of the aesthetic of it. Like, Doom has a very particular aesthetic. You know, when you see a screenshot of Doom, you know, 9 guesses out of 10, you're going to guess that it's fucking Doom. And that's, like I've said in other videos before, that's really good art design when that happens, when you can see a screenshot of the game and identify exactly what game that is amongst the thousands and thousands of games, you know, from the era and from the period. So, yeah. Great art design, looks fantastic. I also I didn't realize I was playing it on hardcore mode for quite a while there, because I didn't realize that you could save the game at any point. So that was great as well. It's so rare that you can save these old retro games mid-level that I just assumed that you couldn't. And so every time I died, I was going back to the start of the level and having another run at it, having another run at it, having another run at it, until Sam pointed out, hey dude, you can just save it at any point. And so once I realized that, I had a much easier time of things. But yeah, an old 1993 game that you can save mid-game. I don't know if that was in the original or not. I can't remember, but it's really, really good to see it here. All right, let's talk about a couple of dislikes. I'm going to talk a little bit about the movement here. The movement was really, really touchy, really twitchy. And I understand, you know, again, shifting my perspective on things and realizing that, hey, this is actually a movement-based game, not a shooting-based game, certainly helped me to adjust how I felt about the movement. But even so, I mean, it is fast, man. Like, you have to, like, most games you hold a button down to run. This game, you hold a button down to stop sprinting and just, like, jog. Slow down a little bit. You are at max pace all of the time. Because it has that, like, Mario-based momentum sort of movement, you don't immediately stop when you stop moving. You continue on for a little while. And that is increased by the speed in which you were sprinting along to start with. So there's lots of times where, you know, it sort of felt a bit like a fucking F-Zero game where you're just blazing around the level and then, oh shit, and you just slip off the edge and into some lava or acid or something like that, and that's game over. That happened to me lots and lots of times as I was trying to get to grips with the movement. But yeah, it just felt very, very touchy, and adjusting the movement sensitivity, which you can do in the menu, I didn't notice any difference at all. Like, you could adjust your aim sensitivity, and I definitely noticed a difference with that, big time. But adjusting the movement sensitivity seemed to have no bearing on how fast or slow you got around and how twitchy the game felt to control, at least on a mouse and keyboard. So take that for what it is. It's not a super big dislike or negative. It's just a thing to be aware of, I suppose. It's a lot twitchier and faster than you might remember Doom being back in the day. The map. I didn't like the map. I didn't love the map. I didn't think it was super helpful. I didn't even know there was a fucking map in the game for the longest period of time. But when I realized that there was a map, it doesn't, like, Doom tends to be, well, I found it to be like it's not a flat game a la something like Wolfenstein, right? Like, there's a lot of verticality in Doom. And I didn't think the map did a very good job of, like, showing you what's on what level, like what's lower than you, what's higher than you. Doors were hard to read. Like, is this a wall or is this a door a lot of the time? Just things like that. I mean, the problem is again, it's not a huge negative because I'm really directionally challenged. I'm like fucking Zorro. Like, I get lost very, very, very easily. If I'm driving somewhere that I'm not familiar with, I've got to drive there like 10 times before I can do it without my fucking Google Maps telling me where to go. That's me. So it's very easy for me to get lost, especially in games that sort of emphasize that maze-like sense of exploration, like Doom does very, very heavily. And so having a good map that I can sort of like navigate, it was hard for me not being able to use that resource as well as I, have become accustomed to doing in other games, I suppose. Again, just a personal thing for me. I didn't love the map. You guys might not have a problem with it at all. It was just, I found it a little bit difficult to use and a bit difficult to read. Something that would have made it really cool is if the map was like Diablo style transparent and you could like bring it up over the top of your sort of like gameplay and navigate that way. But it was either like look at the map or be on the screen. There's no mini map or anything like that. Again, product of its time, but yeah, it tripped me up quite a few times. One thing that I definitely disliked though, and I'm glad that this is a product of games that has largely gone away is that like colored key to colored door system that Doom sort of like popularized and is very iconic of Doom. A lot of these levels are very maze-like. They're not big, like I said. They're very short, very contained arena-style levels, but they get really mazy. And in addition to being directionally challenged, I also have a fucking atrocious short-term memory. And so, like, even like dying and having to redo a part again, it's always like, shit, where was that key that I picked up before I died? I don't remember. That again, it's all just personal. It's all just personal preference. It's just not a system that I have fun with. I find myself getting frustrated very quickly with having to like, oh, I can't get through this door. I need the blue key. I need to go and find the blue key through this maze. I found the blue key. I died. Load from my save point. Fuck, where was the blue key again? I can't remember. I need to work my way through the maze to try and track it down again. Luckily, I had a lot of help in chat, you know, like helping me find this and that I bypassed or forgotten or missed, switches on walls, things like that. But I personally don't love that framework of a gameplay loop, and I'm kind of glad that is no longer a thing in modern shooters. Definitely a relic of its time, and one that I think probably ought to stay there. Funnily enough, like I always sort of like remember the music. Like Doom having just fucking epic music, and a lot of it did, but there were every now and then there was like some really weird tracks on the original soundtrack that felt like they were real mismatches to, you know, the level you're in and what you're doing. Like they were like really, really bad matchups. No. So that's a wall. All right. So we can't go through there. Ooh. Now, at the start of the game, in the remake that I played, you do get the option to play the remastered soundtrack, which I understand is a hell of a lot better and a hell of a lot more iconic to what we all think of as Doom music. I chose to go with the original just to have the original experience as much as I could. And like I said, there were some bangers in there, but there were a lot more misses than hits. More misses than I thought and expected there to be from memory. So the next time I play it, if I sit down and play it again, I'd probably go with the remastered soundtrack and give it that oomph that Doom, we all sort of like synonymize with Doom and that type of game. That's it. Like I said, that's my sort of my little take on replaying 1993's Doom from id Software. I had a blast. I enjoyed it way more than I ever expected to, that I ever thought I would. I thought I'd go back and play it just for old time's sake, you know, like I said, just to see if I could see what Dad saw in it. And I think I very much did see what Dad saw in it. And I liked it so much, in fact, that it's kind of put me on a bit of an id Software kick. And I might even go and try and play some of their other early catalogs, get Wolfenstein, get some Quake 2, Doom 2, like play all their early library and relive that era of, like I said, when games were just a bit more straightforward, just a bit more simplistic, because it's an experience that I'm kind of craving at the moment in my life and where I'm at. And I don't feel like I'm alone in that. So there we go. That's my take on Doom. What do you think? Have you played Doom? Do you remember it fondly back in the day? Did your dad play it? Did you watch your dad play it back in the day? If you did, make sure you drop down the bottom and give me a comment. I'd love to hear some of those stories. But otherwise, that's going to do it from me for today, my friends. Thank you so much for hanging out. My name has been Jamie Dean, and as always, make sure you keep on side-scrolling. Take care.